Okay, hello everybody.
What's up?
We're live. We got another fun film to talk about with you guys today. So we're talking about I'm Thinking of Ending Things, which is the newest film written and directed by Charlie Kaufman, who's like a really, really unique filmmaker. One of my favorite writers in basically all of the history of film. He's made some amazing films. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Adaptation, Being John Malkovich, some other films that he wrote and directed himself. He did one a couple years ago, Anomalisa, which was like an animated film. He did Synecdoche, New York. And so this is like the latest film from him, which is, in a year where nothing's coming out. This came out on Netflix, so it wasn't delayed or anything. So that was pretty exciting.
And a year also where everything is just incredibly depressing. Get you some dose of Kaufman, who is the most depressing writer out there.
Yeah. If you were feeling like your life wasn't amazing and maybe your relationship is weird, but hey, it's a pandemic, so what am I gonna do?
I'm thinking of ending things.
Yeah, I'm thinking of ending
that. Think of that in as many ways as you can. Think of that title.
Yeah, for real, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people want to end this year, this everything, right?
Cut it off. Start over. Cut off the head.
Yeah, cut the chat, right?
Cut the chat.
So this was a very interesting film, right?
Yeah.
And so we're gonna just talk kind of broadly about the film, our first feelings about it. And then we'll go into spoiler territory. It's really hard to talk about this film without really getting into spoilers, I think, because the things that you leave the film having to have some kind of interpretation of what happened, what you just saw, and that things happen, but all of it leads up to like theories about what you're actually seeing, because it's not really clear. The narrative is kind of frazzled. And a lot of things kind of happen in a way that isn't linear or logical. And so it's like, okay, how do you piece this stuff together? Right? Yeah.
And it's not plot driven at all. I mean, there's like maybe like one or two things of just like we need to get from here to here. But other than that, like there's not a lot to discuss in terms of like what happens next. There's just a lot of interpretive stuff. So that's also why.
Yeah. I mean, the main setup of the film, right, is there's this woman named Lucy, we think, right? She's credited as young woman on IMDb. But anyway, so she is going to this trip with her boyfriend Jake to meet Jake's parents, and so they go on this trip, and it's snowing, and they're probably somewhere, I don't know, Midwest or some kind of place that's
some kind of like really out there farmland, middle of nowhere type situation.
Yeah, so the two of them are going, but the whole time, Lucy or whoever this person is, she's kind of like she wants to end their relationship, right? And yeah, I mean that's basically the crux of it. They have this long conversation in the car. A lot of topics get brought up, right? That kind of will come into play later. And when they get to the house and they meet with the parents, there's a lot of weird stuff that happens.
Yes.
A lot of weird stuff that happens at that house.
Yeah. Which is cool. The car ride, just to put it kind of in perspective of like the structure of this film, the car ride itself is like just two people in a car shot from every conceivable angle. Is probably 20 to 30 minutes long of them just talking or thinking or spacing out or daydreaming or whatever. So just so you can kind of get an idea of like, it's not just two people get in a car to go to a place. It's two people get in a car and then we sit with them in that car for like a half hour, which is not a slight at all. It's just like a different kind of gear that you have to be in to watch this.
Yeah, totally. And, they cover a whole bunch of different stuff and topics and like, but yeah, like the whole conflict of that stuff in the cars, Lucy, she's like, oh, hey, he's nice or I like him, but, it's not really working. And she's like contemplating like, oh, it's really hard to get out of a relationship because there's so much, work you have to put into doing
like
it.
More energy than to just go along with it, kind of a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, there's all this, I don't know, they kind of put this stuff out there, like where it seems like Jake there's a connection he has with her that seems like it's almost like he knows what she's thinking. Yeah.
Yes. I was wondering if that was going to head into some kind of like, immediately get into the whole just wacky, Eternal Sunshine type stuff, or like some other kind of like Kaufman device where it's like, they can hear each other's thoughts or whatever, or like, they can enter John Malkovich's head through this hole, like just some kind of weird device to kind of keep it going. But it turns out to be not that kind of film at all. It just puts these things in there. It just lets you think about them, but it doesn't like act on anything.
Yeah, the wackiness is not on that level, but there is as we'll come to when we get to the spoiler section.
It gets there eventually.
Yeah, it gets there. Yeah, and so then after they have this, a lot happens at the house. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And so then the whole time Lucy's talking about, I have to get back home. I have work to do tomorrow. I have to get back home. But it's snowing really hard and it's really cold.
Which I think the first hint for me was they're going on this trip and there's like a blizzard outside, and the blizzard is starting as they're driving, and you can't quite get a sense of what the time of day is because it's just blizzard in the middle of nowhere. And she's like, yeah, I need to work like tonight. And the whole time I was under the impression as the viewer that like they're going to visit the family for like a weekend or something, And she was like, no, I need to get back like tonight because tomorrow I'm writing a thing or I'm doing something. And then he says, oh, it's okay, I have chains for the tires. And then I was just like, that's weird. That's surreal. Like this movie is not taking place in reality because that would never happen. Two people would not have that conversation because this is in the first like 10 minutes.
Yeah,
so just like this ain't it. Like buckle up. Like this. Something's there. It's gonna go off the rails. Yeah. Because he's basically saying like, it's weird. It's like, there's a massive snowstorm, but don't worry, we're gonna drive in the snowstorm at night. After meeting with my parents for whatever amount of time, and driving who knows how many hours to get there in the first place. Like what?
Yeah, exactly. So it's something's amiss. Mm-hmm. But then after they go to the house and meet with the parents, they do leave. And again, there's more conversations in the car. But then they stop at this like fast food ice cream restaurant place.
In the middle of the blizzard, yeah. But basically, it's now that we finally left the house, and again, the house is another probably 40 minutes of this movie, maybe longer. I don't even know, 45 minutes. And then after they leave, the point is that she needs to get home, and he keeps digressing. He keeps like veering off. He's like, but wouldn't it? Like, don't you want to get some ice cream? Don't you want to get a blah 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 whatever? And so the first stop they make is apparently this ice cream shop that's just out off the freeway, but is by itself lit up in the middle of the blizzard, which I thought was a cool visual. Yeah, called Tulsi Town. Yes. And so they get some ice cream from Tulsi Town, and Lucy or whoever this woman is, there's some weird vibes between her and the people that are. It's these three girls basically, and it's there's these kind of weird, weird stuff. Like the one girl is sort of telling Lucy, hey, I'm kind of scared for you or something like that, but she doesn't really say what, and there's this thing like Jake never looks at the other two girls. The other two girls just never looks at them. I don't think he really looks at any of them. He doesn't really look at any of them. He kind of turns around and looks the other way. You're right, yeah. So it's very strange. Yeah, there's just a lot of clues planted throughout, right? And so, he says something like, oh, the girls they're weird, or they're not, I don't like the girls there or something. And he's like, what's wrong with them? And he just like can't answer, but like he can't make eye contact with them. So, but that ties into like some of the other stuff that is like planted about him throughout. So I thought it's interesting the way that is done, but like you really have to pay attention because they pay off things from like an hour ago in like a weird conversation that is like obtuse. So
I think we'll get into this in the spoiler section. I think this scene was a payoff from, it was like 10 minutes in the movie, like a second.
Right. Yeah. No, I know.
So like if you weren't really totally paying attention, you kind of miss it. And I think just to give another sort of point of context in this film, so the two of them are going on this trip, but they're constantly cross-cutting and juxtaposing it with this janitor who works at this this high school.
High school, yeah.
And you see this old guy who's a janitor who's working there.
And they talk a lot about, because we like completely skipped over the house, which was like 40 minutes, and that's fine. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of like talk about like temporality and stuff like that. It's just like, this is happening now, and then that's in the future, and then we're in the past, and yada, yada, yada. Like we see the parents at different stages of their lives and things like that. And so when they get to the ice cream shop, the one girl is talking to Lucy. She says, like, I'm scared for you, like, don't go into the future, like stay here into the present, kind of a thing. So there is like another element of like, oh, is this gonna get like really like, are we finally gonna get to the part where like the whole thing unfolds and it's like a multi-dimensional thing, or like it just gets your mind racing? You're like, what is going on?
Yeah,
you know?
what is going on? Yeah. And again, there's some clues that are placed, but we don't really get a lot of answers.
Yeah.
So then the next scene, so Jake is like, he's just miffed about. So first off, they're in a snowstorm and they bought ice cream, right?
Uh-huh.
And so then, like, the ice cream is melting.
And I mean,
in the car.
The ice cream that they get is like, think of like the 7-Eleven Big Gulp if that was like topped off, you know? Like it's an absurd amount of ice cream.
Yeah, it is absurd.
So they each take like a couple, like just a little bit off the top, and then they're both done, and then the ice cream starts to melt in the cup holders.
Yeah. And he's just like, oh, I have to pull over. I have to throw this away. And she's like, no. Let's not do that.
Like,
no,
I have to. Keep going, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, but there's this high school. I'm just going to pull over and then we'll...
It's funny, like, when you say it out loud, but when you're watching the movie, like, in the dream logic of the movie, you're like, sure. Yeah, there's a high school. Yeah.
And then they pull over and it's the high school, and it's basically the same high school as the janitor, right? And that, okay, so then a whole bunch of stuff happens. We'll get into it in the spoiler section, because it's really hard to talk about that kind of stuff without spoiling things. But yeah, so a whole bunch of stuff happens at the high school as well. The janitor character is there. And then there's an interesting resolution to this story, the story elements of the of the high school part of the film, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't end the way that the part where they left the house. They just leave the house, right?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
We get some other kind of story element put in to this. Like, there was one. They came in and there were characters and they were interacting, and then we get introduced to some whole other stuff.
Yeah.
And then we kind of run with that, and then it cuts to another scene later, or we think, we're not even sure.
Right. Yeah.
And so then we see the janitor guy, in a truck, and he's like by himself, kind of muttering to himself. And then he's kind of taking off his clothes and seizing or something.
Having like a panic attack or something. Yeah.
And then he starts seeing some stuff. He starts seeing like cartoons, basically.
Yeah, the coolest part of the whole movie for me.
So this janitor guy starts interacting with some cartoons. And then one of the cartoons tells him, hey, follow me.
Yep.
And he does it. And then we get another sort of scene that's, I guess, almost like an epilogue in a way, where it's like Jake, he's on a stage, it's this play.
He's correct. He's accepting some kind of award.
He's accepting an award.
Yeah.
Which we'll get into later. Like, that's another thing that was set up very weird the way that this scene played out.
I'll be completely honest. I didn't listen to a word in this scene.
Yeah.
I was already out at this point for reasons. It's not the movie's fault. It's my fault because I despise with every fiber of my being musical theater, dance, performance, dance things.
Yeah.
And at this point, I like my patience for that had reached an end.
Yeah. Let's just say that the musical Oklahoma plays a large role in this film,
which I couldn't give two shits about. And so because I didn't have that, because the movie has a reverence for it, and they talk about it, and they weave it like. It's one of those things where if you have a little bit of knowledge about the original text that the movie is also incorporating, the whole thing is enriched. And I didn't know anything about this musical, nor do I want to know about this musical. So because this movie's referencing it so heavily, I was like, I can't. I'm out. I don't care. That's a me problem though.
Yeah, I didn't really get it at first, for sure. I was like the stuff, like the musical stuff that we'll get into. It kind of threw me off. It kind of threw, like, I feel like my theories were kind of in line with whatever the Charlie Kaufman was trying to get at. Mm-hmm. And then the musical stuff kind of threw me off because I took it very literally, but it's actually supposed to be not totally literal, but it serves a purpose that is how the character views this part of the Oklahoma story.
Okay. So you might have to explain the story of Oklahoma to me, because like again, symbolically, I was doing the work and I was like kind of getting at what they were getting at, but I just could, when he starts singing at the end, I was just like,
yeah,
off. I'm done. I don't care.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he's just throwing all this stuff at you, and again, like, there's all this stuff placed in the narrative that kind of helps that make sense, like why all that's happening.
Yeah. I mean, I was like half paying attention, and like I would check in every 30 seconds and be like, is he still talking about, okay, all right, sure. I guess it's a one big sad metaphor for the whole thing. Yeah.
And so then we get one kind of ambiguous shot at the very end of the film, which we'll get into.
Which I love. I love that. I love the way that they just pull the plug and say the movie's over now. I love that. Yeah.
And that's our non-spoiler version of the film.
And also the nonsensical version of it, because none of that made any sense except for the setup of the movie. I feel like just know that it's in a very different mode. You have to be in like a dream logic, like ponderous state to appreciate this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of things happen and they're not totally logical. They connect all over the place. Something that happened at the very beginning connects with something that happened in the middle, and it's all over the place. Mm-hmm. Okay, so why don't we now get into the part that'll maybe make more sense? Talk about spoilers.
Yeah, so basically this just unravels the whole thing. So if you have any interest in this, I say watch it. I caution that I think it's just a little too long for its own good, honestly. I think the editing in this is a little sloppy, at least it felt like to me. But watch it if you wanted to watch it, because otherwise the stuff that we're going to get into is going to completely there's going to be no point in watching it after this, I don't think. So
okay, so I guess let's start from the last shot, right? Mm-hmm. And we can maybe go a little bit backwards from there. So the last shot is a car covered in snow, right? Mm-hmm. And so, in
front of the high school, I believe,
in front of the high school.
Yeah,
in front of the high school. And so going back a little bit. So the two of them, Jake and Lucy, or the woman, whoever this person is, they drove to the high school, right? Mm-hmm. In their car.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they saw a truck, which was the janitor's truck. Mm-hmm. And so it could be, it's either the janitor's car, or at first my thought was it their car? Was it Jake and Lucy's car?
I thought it was the truck.
Yeah, but I think it's supposed to be the truck. I mean, my first thought, I was like, is that their car? Does that then mean that they actually went there? But
gotcha.
I was kind of confused by that. But I think it's supposed to be the truck that was covered in snow.
Yeah.
Which is like pretty depressing, right? Because basically the idea is this guy died in the truck, in the snow, and that was it. That was the end of his life, right? This guy, this janitor person.
I think that's exactly what it is. I think as heavy as that visual is, I think the dude just died in his truck. Whether he had a heart attack, a panic attack, or he killed himself, the movie doesn't tell us. But it just the idea that the snowed over car is with the dead guy inside for who knows how long. And then if you watch all the way through the credits, there's like after the last bit of credits, there's a sound that comes in that like something's about to come in, like another car is about to enter the picture or something, and then it just cuts off. So it's like the last 5-10 seconds of the credits. There's like a sound thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Another car's pulling up.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Yeah.
Okay, that. Wow. Okay.
It's I choose to believe that like what we're seeing at the end is just finally just reality. It's just like actual real stuff. So that could just be somebody else pulling up, being like, "Why is this car like? Let's just investigate."
Yeah,
this kind of thing.
It's like someone from the school or something like the first.
Exactly, something normal, logical outside of this guy's crazy head. Yeah,
because when I think of a car pulling up, I think of like Jake and I think of Jake and the woman playing, and that fucks me up even more.
I don't think it's that, but although it could be,
right? That fucks me up even more, dude. I don't know. So
go back to the last 10 seconds of the credits and see what you think.
Okay, I'll have to like play the sound when Jake and Lucy arrive.
There we go.
And then play that sound and see if it's the same sound. If it's the same sound, I'm fucked up, man. Like okay. So so there a lot of this film they did, like I said before, they do this cross-cutting of this janitor guy and the two of them, Jake and Lucy. And I immediately felt like, okay, the janitor is Jake in the future.
Yeah.
That was immediately what came to my mind.
Same.
Like, and so
just the way that they talk about the stuff. Yeah.
And again, there was also like 10 minutes in, there's a scene with the janitor and he's doing his job and he sees these two girls and they kind of like, so when he passes them, they kind of look at him, but once he's passed, they kind of laugh at him, which was really interesting. Again, so like you were saying, like that stuff is like real reality. But I think what's, thinking about that now, what's interesting about that shot is like he got a certain perception of those two that was not real because they think he's, just some dumb old janitor dude.
Some old guy, yeah.
But those two then come up at the Tully, the whatever the Tulsi Town scene.
Yeah.
And they act very similar to how when the janitor saw them at that moment. Very giggly, very laughing, very whatever, silly.
Kind of poking fun at him, yeah.
And what we kind of can piece together is that throughout, if we're going with the Jake as the janitor theory, throughout Jake's life, he's put these...
I don't think it's a theory, but...
Yeah. Well, I mean, everything is a theory because we don't know for sure, but I think there's a lot of strong evidence that says that's probably true.
Sure,
right?
sure.
There's all these little moments that he's put into different people in this weird dreamscape or whatever you want to call this place, right? And yeah, I guess to go back to the beginning, right? So the two of them are driving and they keep bringing up all these topics like, I think they talked about like how light isn't real, right?
The color isn't real.
Color isn't real?
Yeah.
Color isn't real. I forget, did they talk about a woman under the influence at the very beginning, or was that when they were driving?
After they left the parents' house, yeah.
Okay, I forget what they did, and they also talked. She reads him this poem that she wrote, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and
is that? No, I was going to ask: is that an original poem, or is that a? Okay, that's like somebody else's poem that I'm assuming.
Someone else's poem, yeah. And actually, again, so we get a payoff on that. There's a whole bunch of stuff. So there's the poem, and this was something that kind of put up a red flag to like she was into way too much stuff, right?
Like, correct. Yeah.
Like she's like, again, there's the woman under the influence. She's like a film critic.
Yeah.
She's like a painter.
They go back and forth. Yeah, she's a painter. She's a physicist. She's a
physicist.
She's some kind of a doctor thing. Yeah.
She's everything. She's everything.
Oh, so is he.
Yes.
And so is he.
Yes.
Yeah. Throughout, like it just goes back and forth of like, oh yeah, man, he's one of the greatest. He's a genius. He's a physicist. He's this. He's that. Like
he's everything.
Who fucking knows? Yeah.
Okay, so they set us up with all that stuff, right? And just to put a pin in that, so when Jake and Lucy or whoever, when they get to the house, some weird shit starts happening. Some timey-wimey stuff, which we'll get into, starts happening. But she goes into Jake's childhood bedroom, right? And there's a whole bunch of books and other stuff. And one of them is Gauss Theory on Color. One of them is like a book of reviews by Pauline Kael, which is going to come back to the woman under the
influence. Yeah.
And there's like a bunch of stuff about physics and things like that. And so from that, we can kind of tell, oh, these are all ideas that he has taken from this point in his life.
Yeah.
And he's feeding them into her, is what it seems like, right?
No, I'm thinking about what I was thinking at that point. So at this point, I wasn't. So I knew, again, as soon as he said tire chains, I knew that this doesn't take place in objective reality, so I shouldn't think about it in that way. And so by the time we got to that, because I mean, even by the time we get to his old childhood bedroom, the shit's already gone weird.
Yeah, it's gone super weird.
But there's all these things that are like, now I'm thinking in a way of like these two are connected in a way that because again, there's just too many similarities. She has like an infinite amount of like professions. He has an infinite amount of professions. So I started to think of them more as like intertwined. So when I saw that like all the books and stuff, it made sense to me that like even if they're his books, his childhood books or whatever, it doesn't matter because this is again dream logic. So this is something that could have been passed on to her through this like weird dream logic.
Oh, sure.
Thing.
They have this connection where they share knowledge or something.
Yeah, not necessarily between the two of them as like real people that are sharing knowledge, just because I don't believe they were real at this point. I don't believe any of this was real. Correct. Yeah, both of them. I thought this was just like, again, I thought this was just the writer jerking himself off in his own mouth, which is fine, which is what it is for the most part. But I just thought, again, like symbolically is just like, oh, all of these things, because, okay, so I didn't mean to get into this, but like, when you're dreaming, your brain is incapable of making shit up. It can't. What it does is it takes things that you've learned or that you've experienced, no matter how deep they are, and it combines things. That's how, like, your brain can't come up with shit. That's why when you like jump off a bridge in your dreams, you wake up before you hit the bottom because you haven't experienced that. You've never experienced death, like true death. Right. So that's like a big like dream theory.
Yeah.
So all of the monsters that you dream are just made up of different parts of things. It's like a tarantula mixed with a dinosaur or something crazy like that. That's dream logic. So the fact that they would be talking about these things and then there's like real books about this stuff in the quote unquote real world of this guy's bedroom kind of made sense to me in that way, if that makes any sense at all. And I'm sorry if it doesn't.
A little bit, yeah.
But like, it just felt too much like a dream to me at that point that I was like, I'm not even going to bother to think about how within the story this makes sense. I'm going to think about it more as like a dream. Like, is this all of these pieces? Because then she goes to the basement and she sees the paintings, right? Which are Jake's. They're signed Jake, but those are the paintings that she had on her phone. Yeah,
that she said, "Oh, I'm a painter too." Right. By the way,
so by that painter. Point, yeah, it's like they're both one and the same or nothing at all. So I was just like, I'm gonna roll with it.
Yeah, for sure. Like once, like the stuff with the books, that's very. I felt like that was a bit more subtle. Like you'd have to pause it and look, and you'd also have to know. Okay, Pauline Kael relates to this review of A Woman Under the. I've never heard of Pauline Kael personally.
Oh, really?
No. I had not.
Oh, yeah, she.
So
Yeah,
even
yeah.
if I like, yeah, I don't know. I just wouldn't be able to put those two together.
Got it. Got it.
So like,
got it.
even if I saw the book, I saw her name, I wouldn't be able to say, oh yeah, that's her review of A Woman Under the Influence. I wouldn't be able to put that together.
Yeah, that informed me of that later, but I don't think I tied it back in the moment, but that makes sense.
Yeah, but I felt like the stuff with the paintings, that was like a very strong visual way to say, oh, by the way, like this stuff that she's saying comes from him. For me, at least. At that point, I did
Sure,
feel
yeah.
like
That's a good way to think about it.
Like Jake was real. Like I felt like Jake and the janitor were the same person.
Yeah.
So I felt Jake is real.
Let me just go back real quick. I didn't think that Jake wasn't real. I just thought that version of him that we're seeing is not like, I'm like in terms of like plot wise of like these two people are actually talking to each other. I didn't think that was happening.
Yeah.
I believe that the real Jake is the janitor, and in some way, there's like a version of him from when he was younger, experiencing this, and maybe he's like, I didn't quite know how that fit yet. So I like Jake was a real person in my mind, but like not that version of him, if that makes any sense. Like in that moment.
Yeah, that does make sense because I think for sure none of this really happened, right? The stuff between Jake and Lucy, none of that really happened. That's some thing in the janitor's head, pretty much. Like it's him imagining a world that's better for himself. Because his
you can have these interpretations even if you don't even know, right? Yeah.
Because it seems like they're just getting into these situations like that. I mean, it's obviously not real. But like with the book, like what's interesting in the book is the book plays it more like Fight Club, where Lucy is the alter ego and they're the same person. But we suspect that they're both real, but only one's real. Whereas this, they're
just throws it out the window.
They're both just a fantasy. Of this person, of the janitor. Playing out this thing he's maybe played out a bunch of different times with different people. Maybe once it was these other people, one of the two girls or whatever, right?
If you want to get into like what we were thinking at the time when we were in the house, so the parents, right? We haven't talked about the parents at all. They get to the house and the parents show up, and at first it's Toni Collette and David Thewlis. I don't know how to say his name. Brilliant, like just two of my favorite actors on the planet Earth. But they look a little too young to be his parents, in my opinion, because he looks like he's 40. So I'm just like, okay, But so I thought that was like just bad makeup or something. But then what happens is they talk to these parents and they're kooky, they're weird, they're like laughing at each other's the same stuff. They repeat stuff a lot, and there's like an air of forgetfulness in a lot of the stuff that they say. So, but then later we see them as older people, and then we see them as younger versions of them. As Lucy's trying to like navigate this house, people keep disappearing on her and stuff. And so I thought at this point, particularly after the dad gives her the robe or whatever, I thought it was like some kind of weird allegory for dementia, like the whole thing. Like I thought this entire movie was just an old man kind of piecing parts of his life together at this point in the movie. That's what I thought it was really about, and that fucked me up because that shit is scary to me, and I have personal experience with it. So I was just like, but I didn't think it was like the best way to approach it ever. So again, in my mind, because you're able to come up with all these theories until you actually figure out what's going on, I was just like, this whole movie's about dementia. Oh shit, this is depressing. But it's not about that. But maybe those parts of it were, but that's what it felt like to me.
But I think, do we both feel like this is something in the head of Jake the janitor, his older self?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so I mean, there's something going on with him.
Yeah.
At the end that he dies of.
I think I can tell you what's going on with him. In my interpretation, it's just crippling depression is what's going on with him. He's had a bad life. And just thoughts of what could have been. But again, we'll get to that at the end.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked a little, we should probably talk a little bit more now about the what happens at the house,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they get there. It's kind of a weird so they first get there, right? And then Jake is like, "Oh, I don't want to go inside yet." And
Yeah,
they're just
right.
waving at the mom. It's waving, like Lucy just keeps waving at the mom, and it's just really weird and awkward.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jake takes Lucy into this barn, and then he tells her the story about a pig that had maggots in its stomach.
Yeah.
Very weird stuff, right?
Yeah.
Very weird. But then, yeah, like you said, they go in, they have dinner with the parents. It's very awkward. It's very weird.
Yeah.
At one point, Jake gets really pissed off and starts yelling and shit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then they keep. So they talk about when they first met, and that story felt made up. Like the way she said it, it felt like they were just spitballing it, kind of.
Well,
to
yeah.
me.
I wonder if that's a side effect of the fact that the whole conversation sounds like it was spitballed.
Yeah.
Because every time they ask, like, "Oh, what do you do? Like, what do you need to get home to write? Like, what's your assignment?" Kind of a thing, like that whole thing felt made up. But the story of how they met, like, yes, but I believed it at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just like because like Jake isn't saying anything, and she keeps like looking back at him, like, "Oh, we met at this place or whatever," you know. And the parents kind of they peter out a couple inconsistencies.
Yeah.
And it's like, "Oh, well, you talked to him at the bar, but then you guys didn't meet again later," or something like that. And I don't know, the whole thing kind of just felt weird to me. It felt
was
like
weird. Yeah.
Yeah, it felt like it felt like if you met someone on like Tinder, or like you met someone on like fucking, some people meet on Grindr or whatever, like how you would make up a story.
Right.
Like the real story. Like we've agreed, here's the real story. So we don't have to say, I swiped left and then we met up and then we had sex and then, we did coke together and then,
You're
like,
right.
no,
You don't have to tell that to your parents.
Yeah. No one wants to say, "Oh yeah, well we met on this site where it's just for hooking up and then we were just like, we're so depressed that we just stuck with each other." Which,
right.
like half the time that's just like the truth, you know?
Yeah.
But anyway, so they have these weird interactions, and then the weird time stuff starts happening. Like we see Jake's parents like older, right? We see them, they start appearing as older, and Jake's trying to help his mom and his dad.
He sticks by her side the whole way, which is they're building this how do I say this? They're building this character, this like archetype, I guess, of a type of depressed, lonely old man that never had any success in the traditional sense in his life. So they're building the archetype of like, and again, this is like the big kind of reveal at the end, but like he was attentive to his parents and he was attentive to his mom. He was a mama's boy, but he never had any kind of social skills to be able to interact with other women, which is I think it's a common trope for those types of like depressed losers or whatever.
Yeah.
So there is like it's kind of neat where like, again, none of this is happening for real, but all of these things I believe are real things that happened in Jake's life in one way or another.
Yeah, he's just like feeling them all sort of out of order at different moments.
Which is, again, why I thought the dementia thing was what the movie was going for. And that fucked me up because, again, it's like all discombobulated, disenfranchised, all of it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, because like there's a moment where Jake sees his mom and she's basically like on her deathbed and he's like feeding her.
Yeah.
And but then like later we see the mom again and she's like a 50s looking housewife and she's like fixing stuff and like she gives us this sort of diatribe about like why Jake is so, do you remember what it was? But it was like why his behavior was so different, so strange because of the way that they brought him up.
Yeah, I need to go back to that because the 50s housewife thing makes sense because if you think about the age of the real Jake, potentially born in the 40s or something, like that's how he would remember a young version of his mom, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, Lucy sees the old version of the dad, and the dad talks to her when she's in Jake's childhood bedroom. It is labeled Jake's childhood bedroom.
Which I believe was totally, but that could have totally been a thing. His dad could have had dementia, and they could have had to label things around the house. Like that could have been a thing. Like again, she's remembering things on his behalf at this point. Yeah, so.
yeah, totally. And not only that, but going with the dementia stuff, and maybe again, like it's like laying the seeds, like, hey, this is what Jake is going to have in the future, right? Maybe it's a genetic thing.
Sure, yeah.
Because they have this conversation, Lucy and Jake's dad, and he's just all over the place with stuff.
Yeah.
He can't remember things. He's like, oh, it was this, oh, it was that. And yeah, it's kind of like laying the seeds of, maybe this is what's going to happen to Jake, right? Yeah, I feel like there was another weird side plot in this house stuff where Jake had taped up the basement.
Yeah.
And there was this whole thing about like, oh, don't go in the basement, kind of like a horror trope.
Yeah.
But what she found in the basement was, and then the 50s mom told her to go down into the basement.
Yeah.
And because he had some dirty clothes and to put them in the washer. And then she in a very Charlie Kaufman-esque kind of thing, she opens the washer and every shirt is the same shirt.
Yeah.
And it has this weird kind of symbol on it.
It's the high school.
It's the high school
gym.
It's the high school janitor uniform.
Okay, I didn't pick up on that. I didn't know it was the janitors. I could because it was like RHS or something. So I was just like, because I had seen him already in the high school, I was like, that's probably his high school clothes or something. But okay, janitor clothes.
I'm very sure it was the janitor uniform.
I hate this movie. It's so depressing. It's so depressing.
It's a little, and I think that's the thing that she puts in is a janitor uniform.
Yeah,
and she looks, and it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's just. It's like,
well, that's his entire life. Yeah.
Yeah, that's his life.
That's why I hate this. It's too sad.
It's fucking depressing, man. Yeah. When you unravel the onion, it's just sad. Every layer, sad.
Yeah. Right. Because there's nothing left to do with this movie after you watch it than to unravel it. And so the more you unravel it, the more depressed you get. It sucks.
Yeah. You just find another sad layer, like, oh, like just thinking about like that interaction with the dad. What that Lucy has. Imagine a different version of Jake having that interaction with the dad, and then he ends up like the dad later, but he's a janitor, depressed, and the only happiness he has in his life is imagining these people he saw for a brief second, and creating an avatar of them, so that he can have this fantasy where he brings them to his parents.
He would have done something different, basically. Yeah. I think the whole. Are we ready to move into the the whole kind of conflict, I guess, of his character, of the whole crux of this thing? What I think it is that
sure.
So the story about how they met, right? Because when they go back to the high school, she talks to the real Jake, and they have this conversation, and I believe she says something of like, he never actually talked to me, kind of a thing. And so I believe the whole thing splinters off from this particular story, splinters off from the fact that he did see her at the bowling alley or whatever the hell it was, but he just never acted on it. He was just too big of, he lacked the social skills or the courage or whatever you want to call it to do anything about it. And so everything else about this woman is completely made up and in his head. And so I think that's the whole, like, after that might have been a turning point in his life. After that, he decided, like, I'm never going to have any success with women socially, whatever the case may be. I'm just going to work as a janitor because this, I can do this. And I could just see these people, these high school people, see them grow up, see them in my town, but like just become like, just embrace my loneliness kind of a thing, which is like, again, the old janitor trope, like of his character. That's what I think it is. I think the whole thing splinters from that trauma of him realizing that he just lacks the fundamental social skills, or he's too big of a pussy, or he's, whatever you want to call it socially. Like he just like never went through with it. He just never went through with it. He just never like tried to,
to just try and. And then he's just like living with this regret, and then also probably these other mental things come in, and then he's creating this this mindscape where he can at least live the life he thought he could want.
But even then, though, like, think about it. He's living this life with this girl. He's finally taking her to his parents. Nothing works out correctly. It all ends up back at the high school. It all ends up with him being naked in his car having a panic attack. Even him living out these fantasies. The only thing that gives him happiness in the end is remembering, like, Tulsi Town, the cartoon.
Yeah,
it's just the things from his childhood. There's nothing.
And also, like, sort of to get all the way sort of to the end is like he sees the pig. He sees a cartoon version of, so it's like taking the story that he told earlier about this pig and how that really had an impact on him,
right?
And almost like seeing himself as the pig and saying like, "Oh, this is just I'm a rotted out piece of nothing."
Yeah,
and I need to just go off into base just to die, right?
Yeah.
I need to let go of myself, but also let go of her, let go of these ideas of her, this fake idea of this person who's not real. Let them go.
Like I wonder, like this is probably the last time that he has imagined, because I do honestly believe the pig is the symbol of like him just killing himself at the end. Just like, if this is what I am, you know, he follows the pig into an empty hallway, and then I think that's when it cuts to the truck.
It cuts to the speech.
Oh, to the speech. Yeah. Okay. So the speech is, like you said, it's more like an epilogue type of thing of like him, I guess, finally like.
So let's talk about the speech.
Yeah.
And,
let's
like,
talk about
what the fuck was going on in that scene?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the speech that he gives is basically, I read it was kind of word for word or kind of close to that, but it is the speech from The End of A Beautiful Mind. That is
shit.
Yes. Yes. Why did he give that speech? Well, again, another thing, Jake's childhood bedroom, right there. He has A Beautiful Mind. That movie.
That's funny.
So so like you said, and this is perfect that you brought this up. The mind cannot create things that it does not already have. How does a person who's experienced nothing, who's never experienced like the joy of being celebrated, how do they do that? Well, in A Beautiful Mind, there was a speech, and so this is almost like he's taking all the things that he liked, and he's creating this thing for himself, a celebration of his life. So he gives a speech, and it's fucking hella weird. Everyone has this weird makeup on.
You know what it is? I think it's that painting. I don't know what the painting is called, of the farm couple. You know, the woman with the pitchfork and the old man. You know what I'm talking about? That painting.
I think American Gothic.
American Gothic, yeah. I think that's what it is. I think that's what everyone's makeup is meant to be in that art style, is I think what it is.
Yeah. So it's just his mind's grabbing different things from his past and then throwing them all together in what he thinks is like a positive. Like, there's this Beautiful Mind speech, and it's played out exactly like that scene where it keeps cutting to Lucy. Like, Lucy is the wife character from that movie.
Yeah. And
then he like sings a song from Oklahoma. There was a whole bunch of scenes where Jake talks about, you know, watching them do Oklahoma, and like that's a thing for him. He really liked that musical scene.
Yeah, because he watched the kids rehearse it and play it every year, because he's at that high school every single year. So he gets to, because he talks about it in the very first conversation in the car. He says something like, "Oh, I see them do it every year or whatever," and then Lucy says like, "Who's they?" You know, or whatever.
And he doesn't answer, right?
He doesn't answer. Yeah. It's too early at that point for the move for his illusion to just rupture, right?
Yeah.
You shut the hell up. You're in the car with me. Like, we're boyfriend and girlfriend. This is fine.
You're along for the ride with me, right?
Right. Yeah.
Another thing too, to bring up about the high school stuff, where the Jake self, the avatar of himself, almost like his perfect self, keeps kind of talking about the janitorial work. Like, he even keeps talking, "Oh, I see these kids and I can tell that they're like broken, or they're like hurt, or something like that." And again, he keeps kind of slipping up, but you know, then he'll reel himself back and be like, "Oh no, I'm a physicist. I'm a this, I'm a that." You know?
Right. Again, the things that he could have been in his mind, were he able to carry out a successful relationship or a conversation with someone or whatever the case may be.
Or not be a farm boy, right? Maybe
exactly.
He thinks I was stuck on this farm and I had to care for my parents who both had mental declines or whatever, and my mom couldn't hear shit, or
Oh, that's right. The mom couldn't hear.
Mom couldn't hear. Yeah, and it's just like, I had to care for them, so I was stuck. But I could have been a physicist. I could have been accepting this award for physics.
Right.
I could have been. And they even again at the dinner they talk about there's all these famous physicist couples that are
right.
And so and again it's just a fantasy, right?
He's just making this shit up. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so that's why that scene at that epilogue scene is so fucking weird, because it's his mind basically before he dies just grabbing all these things. He wants to be the lead in Oklahoma. He wants to accept he wants to accept an award like in A Beautiful Mind. Mm-hmm. He wants to be a great singer, and he tries to sing, but it's all weird because it's like it's just because in his head that's like the perfect moment, but for us we're like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, it's weird because it never happened, because again of the dream logic thing. It's just like it's weird because it's like a Frankenstein of all of these other things, and like none of it fits together because it's not supposed to. It just fits together for him in his head. Yeah.
I guess one of the last parts, something that came a little bit before this to talk about. Mm-hmm. So Jake the janitor meets with Lucy and they have a conversation. Yeah. And then something happens where the Jake, the avatar self, sees Lucy, but then two other people come in, and then there's a dance number. Yeah, right. Which was first point where I was just like, I'm good. I like that, but that threw me off. Like, I thought that was supposed to be a so what I thought that was kind of cool, I thought that was supposed to be like a retelling of what actually happened. Oh. That's what I thought it was. It's like, instead of just doing exposition, just have a dance number that tells what actually happened. And I thought, maybe the janitor killed these two people. Oh, I had the complete opposite interpretation. Yeah. At that point, I was already convinced, because I think so. The reason this movie, I quote unquote, I say I hate it, is because this is the kind of mindset that I have. So I think I don't know much about. I mean, obviously, I don't know Charlie Kaufman, but I think that we both think in the same modes of like, I'm more often than not, I tend to think nihilistically about things. And certainly he does, based on all of his fucking movies, especially Anomalisa. Like, we get it. He's fucking depressed. But in my mind, I had already, I've accepted that she isn't real. He's making this stuff up. And the dance number, to me, was just, again, another, like, hopeful thing of, like, what could have been. And if you remember, there's one of those intercuts of like Jake wandering the halls is those two people in the halls, like practicing for the dance number and like fucking it up. So that's another thing that he had seen right at that point. And now they're coming back and they're fulfilling his fantasy of like, he meets this girl. Cause I believe it's a cool shot. It starts out with like, she's on the end of the hallway. He's in the foreground. And then like behind them comes like the younger avatar versions of them. And then they start the dance number. So like that to me was more of like, this is just, again, another one of those wish fulfillment things. But what you thought something else? Oh yeah. I was totally wrong though. But like, it fucked me up. But I thought he was like trying to, but yeah, what's actually happening is he's letting go. That's the moment when he lets go. Mm-hmm, yeah. Probably. And so instead of holding on to her, he kind of just, like you said, he goes into the fantasy and he just, he lets go of all of these people that he's been holding on to, all the different women that he's seen. And, we just see Lucy is the one that we see. Mm-hmm. But yeah, at that point he's letting them go. And then the next scene is him in the truck, basically dying. Yeah. Seeing the cartoon, seeing the pig, and then going into the light. Isn't there something about like right before you die, like you remember the things that you cherish most or something like that? Maybe, yeah. Which is maybe. How depressing is that? Yeah, no, but that's I think that's how fucking, that's how fucking depressing this is, I think.
I think that's the thing that like brought him joy is Tulsi Town.
And his younger avatar self sings that song. They sing, the two of them sing it. Jake and Lucy sing that song, and they're like, "Yay! I love it." Fuck, dude.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is a movie. It's an onion, and you cry every layer. You start crying more.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, well, I hate this. I'm gonna stop doing this. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that kind of covers it, right? Like that's
pretty much
that's pretty much the story.
Pretty much.
So I was reading, and this is what's interesting too. That kind of adds in another layer. I think it's something to talk about. So I was reading an interview where Charlie Kaufman, he talked about, the book, what he was trying to do. Mm-hmm. One of the things he talked about is, he at least kind of said, yeah, the Lucy character is a made up thing in Jake's head, but he says he can't control her. It's his imagination, but he can't control her, right? And so like you were saying before, even though this is his fantasy, even in his fantasy, she meets with the parents, and the parents are terrible. It doesn't go well. It's super awkward. So even in his fantasy world, he can't control these things. Right. He can't make it go the way he'd want.
Okay, I get that, because there's a lot of things of like, because she's kind of autonomous in that scene in the house. Like she's discovering things about him. Like, again, don't go. I don't want you to go into the basement because I don't want you to figure out that, I wear the same shirt every day and that like I paint these paintings that
I'm a janitor. I fed you all these ideas.
Like I don't need this like wish fulfillment avatar to know these things, So I get that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I feel like that adds another layer onto how. So it's almost like all these things that he's created these things, these avatars of Lucy, of these two girls that he saw in the high school once, that he's probably played out these fantasies with them, put the same ideas into their head, have them feed them back to him, right?
Right.
But he can't control this world. They're all fighting to get out. And it's like he can't even have the fantasy, right?
Right. Yeah, which is probably something that leads to the inevitable outcome. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why. And see, if you think about, I'm thinking of ending things. It works on a lot of levels, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's why I said at the top. I was just like, fucking end me.
Yeah, maybe he's thinking it's time to die.
Yeah.
All these avatars are thinking it's time. I'm thinking of ending this weird fantasy thing.
Yeah. Get me out of here.
Yeah. How can I get out? Right. Basically. And it's all this thing that he can't, control. And it's just leading to him inevitably demising. Right.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting that it makes sense. Like if you make a film, you don't want to have a character that doesn't have any kind of agency or kind of drive because it makes them very blank.
Yeah.
It just makes the Jake character more just doomed, right? It's just doomed.
I think what the ultimate success of this thing is picking all of the different things that he's going to pull from and then peppering it throughout the entire movie. Like I just now remembered like that movie, that fake like Robert Zemeckis movie that they watched.
Yeah, we didn't talk. That was so fucking funny.
It was very funny. But then at the end of the movie, when they're talking about how they met again or whatever, or in the high school, I don't remember, but like he's talking to the girl again about how they met, and or maybe it's in the car, and then she says like, oh yeah, it was at the diner. It's like, oh yeah, well, you were asking for the whatever, for the burger. Yeah. So it's like bullshit.
He said that to the dad. It was the dad. It was this weird thing. It was an old dad. It was like the dementia dad. And he's helping, and Jake is helping him, and then he's like, oh, how did you guys meet again? And then they tell the diner thing.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Which is another layer to the dementia thing of like, absolutely, you would remember things just like randomly from a movie as like the real thing because your brain can't keep it all straight. So like, I think that's a real strength of the writing in this thing is that they picked like, okay, so we have like, a total of like 50 things, right? There's these books, these reviews, blah, 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 blah. Now, how do we subtly just drop them throughout the entire story? I thought that was really like a success of the writing, I think.
Yeah, figuring out the beautiful mind stuff really helped me understand the ending because it's just like,
yeah, I didn't know about that.
But it totally makes sense, and the scene looks exactly the same. as the that scene at the end of A Beautiful Mind when he's accepting the award.
Okay,
It's
that
just
makes a lot of sense.
again, it's distorted because it's in this guy's brain.
Like in the reverse shot of him looking at the girl in the audience too is from A Beautiful Mind, right?
Yeah. It's Jennifer Connelly. It's Jennifer Connelly with the old makeup. They're both old.
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same. They even shot the same. Like it's the same reverse shot. The same. She stands up and applauds at the end. It's all the same. It's all the same. The Pauline Kael review. So I think someone's saying it's like verbatim in.
It's funny because it's funny because when she was like went on the diatribe about the movie, I was just like, that sounds like Pauline Kael. Like the Pauline Kael was like when she was scathing about something, like she was scathing about it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So it's just that's the film. It's like there's this guy Jake had a lot of regrets in his life.
Didn't have any experiences in his real life, so he makes up all of his experiences from like stitched together parts of other things. And
that's the movie. I'm thinking of
pretty
anything.
Yeah, pretty much.
And again, like you said, that last shot is reality.
I think so. I think we're finally pulled out of the fucking movie within a movie or whatever it is. Yeah.
And just one last thing that I didn't bring up. So when the Avatar Jake and Lucy stop at the high school, so Jake wants to throw the stuff away. Yeah. He goes off. He like gets mad at the janitor. He's like, "Oh, this guy's looking at us. I'm gonna go find him." And then he leaves, and then she's waiting, and she gets impatient, and she leaves the car, and then the car's locked. She closes the door. Car's locked. She can't get back in. She looks at the trash can, and it's full of the ice
creams.
The ice cream. Yeah, it's just full of it.
Yeah.
Which again, it's like this fantasy's played out over and over, and it plays out the exact same way.
Yeah.
They always end up here. They go to the house. A bunch of weird shit happens. They go to the high school.
Yeah. He tries with different girls, and there even is a part where the actress from the Zemeckis movie is in the car with him for like a split second. So like all of these different attempts are maybe like collapsing in on each other.
And again, that's right. He watches the movie and so he imagines her, the lead actress from the movie. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. It's too sad. Stop it.
Yeah, man. Just gets more depressing the farther down you go. Okay, I think we've covered everything. You have any final thoughts?
I guess I could. The last thing I want to say about it is just the movie itself. Like again, thematically and like writing wise, we can talk about this for like an entire day, which I think is the real strength of the movie. But like, how is it as a movie, right? Like, how does it play out as like a 2-hour thing that you watch? I didn't think it was that great. I think it's one of his worst movies, honestly. Just from the perspective of like, maybe it was a budget thing, but like 80%. Okay,
felt 60, like it. Yeah,
60 to 70% of this movie is either in a car or in the farmhouse, and so like location wise, like there's just not the stuff that is there that is visually interesting, but there's just not enough of it to sustain 2 hours and 14 minutes or whatever it is for me personally. So it's like a lot of wishy-washy dialogue and a lot of really, really cleverly placed things. But like overall, it's not the most exciting watch, and maybe it's not supposed to be. Maybe that's my fault as like expecting it to be a little more entertaining. But he has done stuff that is just like way like on a different scale, kind of. And so
like this Synecdoche, New York is like
it's
fucking crazy,
wild.
It's wild. Yeah.
So like from that perspective, like it's not the most fun movie to watch, but the story itself, I think it's too buried for its own good, to be completely honest, because when I read, we talked about this a little earlier before we recorded, but when I read the synopsis for the book, and you said like the book is done more like Fight Club. It's more like, it's a little more plot based. There's a little more structure to it, and that like there's a twist, and then after the twist, there's like a final conflict and a resolution or whatever. This movie doesn't have any of that. This movie is, again, it's just one big dream, and that kind of bothered me. And I like these types of, I like surrealist stuff. I just didn't think it was executed that well, is all I want to say. I don't think it was executed. I don't know if he was just too far up his own ass making this particular movie. That could have been it. But I just think that it could have been a little more engaging for the viewer rather than to say, no, fuck you. I'm not explaining any of this shit. None of it. You read up about it later, you know.
I think a lot of it had to do with the budget. If you think about like,
right,
why do you have like, if these are all choices that filmmakers make because they have to make them, right? Why would you have 30 minutes in a car?
Right.
Just dialogue. And all of that dialogue is just set up for things we're not going to see until later, right? That's hella cheap to do.
We talked about this in the Tax Collector review because I watch a lot of those cheap 90-minute like Bruce Willis's Hard Kill or whatever the fuck, you know, that comes out every week. You know, like these guys, they make 3 movies with the same director at the same time just because. So like the car ride scene is like the pinnacle of the cheap movie thing. Is just you get 2 people on a set in a car and you just spend 20 minutes of the entire movie. Like if you think about it, I think Tax Collector probably spent 10 minutes in that car, maybe more. So like,
yeah, for sure, driving around with Shia and Shia and the pretty boy. Yeah.
So like you said, that's a choice. That's how they had to make it.
I feel like after Synecdoche, New York, they were like, okay, we'll let you do the film for 20. I'm serious. I'm fucking serious, dude. Probably. But that's the reality of filmmaking, right? Just think of this. What comes to my mind is Shyamalan. This dude was like in the early 2000s. They gave him real budgets. I mean, the Village was shot by Roger Deakins. Yeah, and that shit looks good. Yeah. But he fucked up again and again and again and again. And
they gave him budgets because he made money is the thing. He made them like Sixth Sense was, I don't know the numbers.
Oh, it was huge. Yeah, it was huge.
Probably 10 times the amount of money they invested in it. So that's just how Hollywood works. Yeah.
Yeah. But he doesn't have a huge directing track record, Charlie Kaufman.
He does not, yeah.
He sort of directed Anomalisa. He directed it, but there was also someone who directed the animation. Right. He directed Synecdoche, New York, which had a kind of large budget and probably didn't make a lot of money.
I don't think it made a lot of money.
Yeah. But all the other stuff he just wrote that we know him for, right?
And that's the stuff that is really, really good. So like
like the stuff that's directed by Spike Jonze.
Yeah.
Adaptation and
John Malkovich.
Yeah, and Michel Gondry did Eternal Sunshine. So,
which he's a psychopath in his own right. So, like, I think that, like, if you like Charlie Kaufman works best when you marry him with other psychopaths, because Spike Jonze is, by all accounts, just a fucking weird dude too. So he's a little more grounded, I think, but he's a weirdo. So yeah, I don't know. Again, I just don't know if he got up his own ass too much directing this thing. But because I think that it didn't come out like as a movie to watch. It didn't come out as clear as it could have been. And I'm not saying explain the shit to me. I'm just saying, like, again, like a David Lynch movie is just as obtuse, if not more obtuse than this. But in a weird, dreamy way, it like kind of makes sense on a first watch a little bit more sometimes. And I'm not talking about stuff like Inland Empire or like when he just fully says
Inland Empire. Like Inland Empire, like I was like, what the isn't there a dance number in that too?
There sure is. At some point. Yeah. There's something about these auteurs and their fucking dance numbers. Shape of Water had a dance number. Like, I fucking hate dance numbers. Can we talk about how much I hate dance numbers?
I'll tell you though, this movie made me kind of like dance numbers because it was like, again, my interpretation was that it was just exposition. I was like, holy shit, that's like, it kind of blew my mind. The idea of like giving exposition through a dance scene, that like kind of blew my mind because it's like, you could do that and like, it feels different than just like, you know, these shitty blockbuster movies where it's just like
that would be cool, but that's not what it was.
It wasn't. Yeah, but it gave me an idea of like,
that's why it made me. I was just like, fuck, dude, great wish fulfillment dance. I get it.
It was, it was just him signifying like, oh, I'm letting go, which is kind of weird. I don't know.
Yeah. So anyway,
especially because they have to flip avatars, right? Like, let's have a new dance avatar come in instead of our old avatar.
Yeah, you're right. Presumably because, you know, they couldn't do the dance numbers, the two leads, so.
I don't know. I have no idea. I think Jesse Plemons and what's her name, I think they'd be up for it.
They seem up for it. They seem super up for it, yeah. Yeah.
But no, that's not what we got. I feel like that was a deliberate choice.
I think it was,
personally.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a weird movie, man. It's a weird movie. Go ahead.
No. It is a weird movie. I just think that it could have leveraged its weirdness to be more interesting to the average viewer. I know it's not made for the average viewer, but like I think it could have been just a little better. Like it could have been more successful if the directing choices. I don't know if it was a money thing. It could have been a money thing, but I think it could. Yeah.
I think it's a money thing, but I think, like you said, there are people who have taken his work and done better with it. Now, I think some of that has to do with budgets. I really do. I'd have to watch Synecdoche, New York again because that's one where they gave him a budget.
Yeah, I need to watch that again too.
Because I feel like that's like, I was thinking, what's the most Charlie Kaufman film?
Probably adaptation. Probably.
Yeah.
He's literally like in it. His character of himself.
Yeah, of himself.
There's like 18 layers to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I suspect Synecdoche, New York is the most Charlie Kaufman film. I really do, actually.
Probably, yeah.
And I feel like I need to watch that again to kind of compare because I think that is a film where
isn't that about a depressed? He's not a writer.
Theater director.
Theater director. That's what it is. Yeah.
And then he like creates a mini New York on stage. It's fucking.
Yeah. That's
fucking weird, dude.
I like the meta stuff when he does meta stuff like that a lot more than the ponderous, artistic, poetic stuff. But again, this is based on a book. I just think that the way that he chose to, I think the story itself is stronger than the way that it comes across in the movie is basically the best way I can sum it up.
Well, he Charlie Kaufmanized the story because he's not interested in plot twists. And he even said, like the interview I saw with him, he said, I'm not interested in like doing the plot twist. He just said, you can't pull it off in today's day and age. So he's trying to do something. He's trying to say something else with that story. Use that as a vehicle.
Interesting.
But yeah, he said he wasn't really, he didn't think it would work.
He's probably right. I think if you play the whole thing straight, like the whole thing straight, we get to the part in the high school, then that would have not been a great. Yeah, it would
unravel and we'd be like, well, depends on how you direct it, right? If you don't do like, is there the juxtaposition with the janitor? Is this sort of like, would it be like an Identity? Like the movie Identity?
Exactly. But you have to hint at it somehow. Like even still. And you have to be really clever about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, there is a universe, I guess, where this movie is like Identity, where we do the juxtaposition and then we get to, because in the book, what happens is like, we get to the scene at the high school, the older self has the conversation with the woman and then they kind of merge, right? Or something like that.
Something like that. She like flat out tells him like, nah, I'm not real. And he's like, got it.
Yeah. And then there's like this scene in a closet where
I've read about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Where like basically he kills himself in the closet.
Yeah.
With the
is it with the hangers? Or?
Yes. Yeah. With the hanger.
Yeah.
And then next it's just people talking about the incident that happened. Yeah, I mean that's a different movie, right? It's a very different movie.
It is, yeah.
But yeah, it's playing into that plot twist, right? It's like, Tyler Durden is the narrator.
Yeah. Again, I don't think the whole approach is bad. I love the wishy-washy, dreamy stuff. I do like it. I just think that maybe he was not, maybe he didn't have the money, he didn't have the time, maybe he just wasn't interested at all in making it a more interesting watch. Maybe he just wanted to do the thing that he did and he did it. So, but for me, it was just like, I see the potential in the story and I think it could have been told a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, just like thinking about those scenes in the car, like both sides.
That's 40 minutes of the movie. 45 minutes of the movie is the car.
Yeah, for sure. But like when you see what the payoff is, It's a lot of investment for that payoff, right? Like, what's the payoff of the scene of them talking about, oh, color doesn't exist? Well, it's a book,
right?
You see
for half a second.
You see a book for half a second. That's the payoff of that conversation. Other than what, how we feel having those ideas put into our mind. If that doesn't do anything for you, that's you're not going to be into it.
Right. And the thing is, like I said, they picked like 50 things and they just pepper them throughout. So like if half of these things don't hit for you, then the movie's not going to hit for you.
Oh, you're going to fucking hate this movie.
Yeah. Yeah,
you're
exactly.
You're going to hate this movie big time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's our review of it. I kind of liked it. I definitely, at the end, I was confused a little bit. I had some ideas. Some things threw me off. The dance scene threw me off.
Mm-hmm.
The ending, the last shot kind of threw me off. But, reading about it now, I've definitely had, I think, a lot of fun talking about this movie.
Definitely.
More so than I would say like 60% of the experience was good. The stuff at the house was really good.
Yeah.
The stuff even at the high school was good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely that epilogue scene. I was like, what the fuck is going on?
I think
I had no idea.
I think the epilogue scene, hard out because of the whole musical shit. I was just like not interested at that point. But I think what he did a really good job above like telling the story is setting the atmosphere. I think the atmosphere of being alone at night in a blizzard in a dream somehow came across, like in particular by the time they get to the ice cream place, like you get that sense of like we're in the dream world, and like there's something cozy to me about like, well, it's not cozy in general, but like just about like the being in the blizzard and just like being there in the middle of it and you're safe kind of a thing. So like that kind of worked for me. Like I think atmospherically at least he did a good job. Yeah, for sure. Like all that stuff in the car, it felt like right, they're kind of in their own little universe. Exactly. Yeah. They're going somewhere, but like they're in this universe there, and that's all that. Like there's a backdrop of these like things that are reality, but like it's not really, it's not really there. No, it's not there. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, all right. That was our review for I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Very interesting film. Definitely, if you're into this stuff, give it a watch. Yes, and if any of this made any sense, then definitely give it a watch. But number score, do you have one? I gave it I think it's like a 7 and 7.5. Like that was when I first was done with it. I gave it probably like a 7 or an 8. Mm-hmm. I'd round it up because I'll I love his films, honestly, and I do think that there's a lot of stuff. I'd be interested to watch it again, see how I feel the next time. There's a lot of stuff. Where, like we said, long payoffs, right? Yeah. You get a lot of content. You get like 20 minutes of content. The payoff is 5 seconds. Yeah. And it's even spread out a little bit. Yeah. So piecing more of that stuff together might be fun for me. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely a more scaled down version of films that he's made, for sure, I would say. I think so. Yeah. I think for me, like for like a first watch, like knee jerk reaction is like a 6.5, I think. Yeah. Not because it's bad. I don't think it's bad. And 6.5 is not a bad score. Technically. It's just, I just think it could have been told a lot better. And, I don't know. Yeah. There's just, I'll just go with that. I mean, I would definitely say that Eternal Sunshine adaptation and for sure, John Malkovich are all better than this film. Oh, well, yeah. But that's like not even on the same playing field, I feel like. Yeah, it could be. It could be. Like, I'm sure there's some people that really could like this film. It could be. That's the thing. This movie could, in another universe, be an Eternal Sunshine. I think it could be if it was just handled a little differently. Because the story it has enough of the mindfuckery that could pull that off, I think. Yeah. I just think the way that he chose to do it is just really more literature, poetic kind style as opposed to like a real movie style. Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's so I gave it a 7.5. Lucian gave it a 6.5. Those are our thoughts. Mm-hmm. Let us know what you guys think. What are your theories? Do you think our theories are way off? Or do you have, or do you have like a completely different interpretation that like nobody's thought of? That would be interesting.
Yeah, that would be. I'd love to hear theories about this film.
Yeah.
So so that's our review. Hopefully, we'll have some other cool films to talk about next week. And I know I'm gonna talk about at the end of the month. So the new Greenland movie's gonna come. Oh, that's so Greenland is the latest in the Gerard Butler action film, the Gerard Butler franchise. We should
How
say.
did I not know this? That's let me look that up.
Yeah, so it's like I think the premise is like the world is ending, and so everyone has to get to Greenland. I think there's like asteroids are gonna hit the planet or something.
It's on my watch list.
So that comes out at the end of the month.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
Yeah. Have you seen Geostorm? Have you watched that film?
No, God, no.
Oh my
Should
God,
I?
yeah. If you have time to burn, if you just got like I don't know,
It felt like a Gods of Egypt situation where like I just don't want to waste my time.
Well, I think it's better than Gods of Egypt.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gods of Egypt is like, but I think if you can accept that Gods of Egypt it just does some atrocious things, you can have fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
The Geostorm is more like, how did they spend so much money on this insane premise with Gerard Butler as like a fucking scientist or whatever?
Okay, never mind. I'm back in. I'm gonna catch up on the Jerry. I think I've only missed like one or two of his recent things. I'll catch up with Jerry and I'll watch Greenland. That's funny.
All right, yeah. So look forward to those and some other reviews coming up in the future. So thanks a lot for stopping by. Take care and see you again in the future.
Peace out.